Well, welcome everybody to episode 1 of Keystone Keynotes. And what better guest could I have but the CEO and president of Keystone Sales, Mr. Bob Della Sala. Bob, say hello to everybody.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here, Jerry. Looking forward to our little conversation.
Fantastic. So appropriate that you be our first guest on your show.
I'm honored.
Well, Bob, I always like to start every interview I do with kind of the beginning. And what I mean by that is, can you share with the audience your journey in HVAC? You know, you are now the owner, the CEO, the president of one of the what I call mega rep agencies in the Northeast. How did that happen? Where did the journey begin?
Yeah, actually, I didn't start in the HVAC business. I started in the plumbing business.
Okay.
You want to go way back?
Yeah.
I actually part-time. My uncle owned a. Excuse me, I take that back. My uncle didn't own. He was the controller for a small wholesale supply house in Roselle Park, New Jersey. And excuse me, I forget the name right now. I forget the name, but at the time, I had a part-time job in a supply house. And that's how I first started. But when I graduated college, and then after college, I got a job with A.O. Smith Water Products selling residential and commercial water heaters. And that's how I got in the industry. And I worked inside for about 4 months and then went outside sales. And my first sales territory was Western Massachusetts, Vermont, and Eastern Upstate New York.
Okay.
And that's where I started. And then what got me down to Pennsylvania was the guy retired that market, and I wanted to get closer to home, being from New Jersey. And that got me into Pennsylvania, where I am today. Now, what happened to get me into the HVAC side was in 1996, A.O. Smith decided to get rid of factory guys.
Oh, yes.
And that's how I got in the rep business.
Yeah.
So I got to go work for Joe Bizignero, who was a big Mestech representative, and that really got me on the boiler side with Smith, HB Smith, and then also we had EMI, which is one of the American-made mini split manufacturers back then. So that was kind of my first entree, and that was in the mid-'90s when I really started getting into the HVAC business.
Now, EMI, the same EMI that is with Utica Boiler?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, same company. ECR owned all the different brand names, and EMI was one of those. And what was unique about EMI, because they were the only U.S. manufactured mini split, and they were the only one that had a metal indoor unit that they could put heat strips in there.
Yes.
And that was a big deal.
It's so interesting. I didn't know we were going to be talking about this. My experience with EMI was I did training for them through Matt Conant. Matt Conant used to work for them. Of course, now Matt's with ICM Controls and mutual friend.
Yep.
But that unit that you're talking about was, and still is, in every Hertz rental unit. The little place you go in and rent a car.
Sure.
And it was the only one that had an electric strip in the essentially the evaporator.
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah.
It was a little ugly. You wouldn't want it in your house, but for a commercial application.
Well, that's where we sold a lot of those. We really didn't sell them in a residential home because people just couldn't tolerate that look.
Yeah.
But we sold a ton of those in the commercial setting.
They were such a cool product for sure. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, look, I'm always interested in hearing stories about successful people's influences and mentors. So please share with us, is there someone who kind of took you under their wing, maybe more than one person, and help you find that path to success?
Yeah, I if I think about this industry, when I went to work for A.O. Smith Water Products Company, and you probably remember this gentleman because he's in New Jersey, John Meyer.
Oh, of course.
Okay. And he was probably my first mentor in this business. God rest his soul. He passed away a few years ago.
Very unexpectedly.
Yeah, he was a kind of a mini giant in our industry, because when I say mini giant, because he wasn't nationally known, but he was regionally known,
and everyone knew him, and he knew everyone.
Yes. Yeah. And he was a great mentor. He was actually my immediate boss, and I learned so much from him. And then clear and obvious was Joe Bizignera when he hired me to come work for him. Was my mentor of mentors.
And what was Joe's original business name?
His original business name was EIA. He started the company in 1973. It was called EIA, Energy Industrial Associates. And then as he grew, and then in the early 90s, that's when he wanted to expand his business and he needed some capital. So he hooked up with Doug Tozier, the Philadelphia train store. And then that's when they put together a side business called TES, which was
That's what I remember.
Total Energy Systems. Yeah. And that's who I worked for before I ended up purchasing the company.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And I know Joe is close to your heart because when I go to your place, in fact, I'm going to be training at your place for the very first time tomorrow, a botch class, which I'm so excited about. But your training room is dedicated to Joe.
Yeah. A lot of people don't understand is that he was way ahead of his time. He was, we all talk about training is selling. Okay.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, he was doing that 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why it was so appropriate, I thought, that after I bought the building that we're currently operating out of and we built the training center, that, why wait till the guy passes to memorialize him in a setting like this? That I felt that he was one of the leaders in training, and we dedicated to him a couple of years ago.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Well, look, I know a little bit about your past, and I know as a young person, athletics was a huge part of your life. And I'm curious to know, was athletics ever possibly a path of a career?
Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah, 100%. I was a total jock. I mean, I played football, basketball, and baseball my whole life. And I'll tell you, my attendance record in school was perfect because I knew if I didn't go to school, I couldn't play.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So, so it was very important. So when I graduated high school, I ended up going to college, Keene University in New Jersey. And I went to camp, and I wanted to play right away. I didn't want to sit. So I asked a couple of coaches, what positions are available for new guys, seniors that have left and positions are available. So tight end was the position. So that's the position that I went to try out for. And fortunately, at the end of the camp, I was the starter my first year at Keene. So I really enjoyed it. I'll tell you a funny story is that, so anyway, we're into the fourth game of the season, and we're playing Montclair State. It's the Pride Bowl. It was back then, there wasn't many games on TV, but that was one game they put on TV.
Yeah, the Battle of New Jersey.
Yeah. So anyway, they're interviewing the coach before the game, and they say, "Hey, Coach Haslett, it's been kind of a crazy season this year. You come out and beat Trenton State, and then the next week you lose to Wagner, and then you come back the following week and beat Salisbury State. What are we going to expect today?" He goes, "You're telling me it's a crazy season. I'm into the fourth game of the season. I found out my tight end only has 9 fingers." Well, maybe your guests don't know, but I only have 9 fingers because I did cut one of my fingers off in high school in woodshop.
Yikes. And
And that's probably why they don't have woodshop any longer in high school. Maybe I should take the blame for that. But anyway, that was kind of a funny story. So I did play a couple of years, and then I decided to try to take it further. So I did go into a couple of combines, a couple of pro tryouts, the Canadian Football League, the USFL, and the NFL.
for some reason, the Denver Broncos is in my head. Did you have any?
No, it was the Dallas Cowboys,
Okay.
actually. In 1987, I got to go to their camp in 1987, and I was one of the last cuts in 19. So I made it all the way to the last cut, and then
In 87, was that Jimmy Johnson?
No. Actually, it was Tom Landry was still there in 1987. That was 2 years before. In '89 is when he got.
Wow.
So I was out there practicing with Ed Too Tall Jones, Randy White.
Wow.
Herschel Walker was there. I mean, it was an amazing experience. And that was the year also, I don't remember this, but 87, after camp was over, they went on strike. And that was the strike year.
Did they want to call you back?
Well, I do want to, this was tough. They didn't.
You weren't a scab, were you?
Well, they wanted me to be a.
I'm sure they did.
But I chose not to. And it was my dad also said, "Okay, enough of that. You need to go to work." So it was. Who knew that the strike was going to last 10 weeks too?
Yeah. But the voice of reason is usually Dad.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very cool. Oh, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
So, Bob, look, the name of your show is Keystone Keynotes, so I think it appropriate that we talk about your company. I'm really curious about your business philosophy. Please share with our audience how you built Keystone into, again, what I call a mega agency, and what is your business model?
Yeah, it's it's not rocket science, okay? I realized in the rep world, when you have a geographical area, and at the time when I bought the company, our geographical area was eastern central Pennsylvania, southern Jersey, and northern Delaware. That was the territory.
Yeah, which is fairly typical, right?
That's a typical Philly rep.
Yeah.
That's the territory. And I saw that, and there's only so many lines that you can represent in that market.
Right.
And if, your people want to make more money, you'd like to make more money. And I saw that the only way that was going to happen is that I was going to have to expand territorially. And that's not an easy thing. You just can't go to a manufacturer, hey, I'm going to move down to Maryland, D.C. Can I represent your line? That just doesn't happen that way.
Right.
So under the tutelage of Joe Bizignero, I realized that, the only way you're going to expand is you got to acquire other people. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I started doing. And that's how I got down into the Maryland, DC market, because I acquired a company. And it just so happened to me at that time, it was Vidaris was one of the lines that they represented before Bosch ended up buying them. But that was the first entree into expanding our territory, and that was through acquisition. So Keystone today, 20 years ago, was 5 different rep organizations. Wow. Yeah, so that tells you right there. Consolidation with distributors, consolidation even with some manufacturers. Well, it's inevitable that there's going to be consolidation in reps as well.
Right.
So I saw that, and that was the catalyst of where we are today. And really, the model is to delight our customers, right? We want to make sure that our customers want to do business. They look at us as a resource. That's why we do training, right? Mm-hmm. Value added,
no doubt.
Okay. Also, that they like doing business with us because we get back to people. We do the things that we need to do. That I call them the little things, right? And if we can do those little things and keep our nose clean and do the right stuff, it's a pretty easy, simple business model. Now, obviously, there's more to it than that, because then there's the business and running the business. Obviously, making sure you have the right people, make sure they all believe in the same thing that you believe in, and that sometimes you have trial and error. You have people in your organization that just don't fit, and then you got to make some moves. So, fortunately, probably 90% of the people that I've hired are still with me or were with me and retired.
Right. That's cool. So you may have answered my next question, because it has to do with acquisition. Clearly, you see acquisition as a form of growth. What is it that you look for as a potential buyer of a rep agency? What are you looking for specifically? Is it strictly territory? Is it product lines, personnel, all of the above?
Yeah, well, it is all the above.
Yeah.
Now, as we were growing, definitely territory was was the key because I wanted to grow territorial. If you'd ask me now, I don't need to grow territorially. I'm looking for lines that they represent that match up.
Sure.
Okay. And then the last part is probably the company culture. Does it meet the same culture that we have? It's not the ultimate, but it definitely helps in the transition. And then the other thing that I look for, and this is the key, do they have a succession? Okay. Those are for me, those are the candidates that are top on the list, because if they don't have a succession plan, there's a problem, because their manufacturers want them to know what the succession plan is.
Right.
They're constantly looking for that information, want to make sure, because, hey, listen, they've invested in us, and they want to know there's a long-term future as well. So those are the candidates that we look at.
Really interesting. Yeah. And, you mentioned product lines. So let's talk about that. Currently, you represent some of the top companies in plumbing and HVAC, without question. How is it a constant search for more product lines? And how do you keep the present product lines happy, so to speak? That's got to be a challenge.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I will tell you, it depends on where your organization is at the time. Okay, when we first started out, we were looking for lines.
Sure.
Right. And as I told you, we want to try to look for lines that complement each other so that we don't have to deviate too far from what our core business is. Right.
Right.
So we want to stay in the mechanical room. Okay. And any of the core business in that mechanical room is where we want to stay. And so that's kind of what we look at. Now, you always want to have your eyes and ears open for maybe opportunities, but we're in a different position now where we're not really looking for lines. Okay.
I imagine some come to you.
Well, that's what, people are coming to us now, and we can pick and choose those opportunities because of where we are in the marketplace and how we're perceived by the customers in the marketplace. And that, if you want to do business quickly, because we know we have the relationship with the customers, they're going to come to us. So we sometimes now have an opportunity to pick and choose because of where we are. There was a time where we were out looking. Now
Sure.
we're kind of wait and see what we need.
Well, that's the result of your hard work. Let's be honest. The opportunity to now have companies come to you instead of you having to search them out has got to be pretty cool.
And I also owe that to my team. Right?
Oh, no question.
Okay, because they're doing, there was a time where I was out there doing the hard work and all. Now I'm managing people, so I'm in a different position.
Right.
But I have great people out there that are creating the environment and the relationship with customers. That's why these guys want to come and talk to us.
Well, that's the perfect segue to my next question. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your people. At Keystone, I've noticed you have a real interesting mix of youth and maturity. As you mentioned already, you have people that have stayed with you already most of their career, some people retiring from your company. So here's an opportunity for you to kind of give props to some of your people. So please share with us.
Yeah, I mean, we have 24 people in the organization.
Wow.
When I bought the company back in '96, there was 8 of us. So there were 7 and me. I was the 8th.
Yeah.
Now we're at 24. We have 23, and I'm the 24th. And we're probably going to be hiring a couple more here in 2025. And we do have a mix of old, and we're bringing in young talent in now because we have to make a transition.
Yeah, sure.
That's one of the biggest problems a lot of companies have, is that you lose all that knowledge. The guy retires, and then you think you can just put somebody in there and everything's going to be fine. So I've looked at it, and I've been fortunate enough that the company's doing well enough that I can have a transition period where I can probably spend a little extra to have a new guy come in while the older gentleman is still there.
Yeah.
And then have 6 months to a year to work with them, and then make the transition. We have some talented people in the organization. I think of a couple off the brink. You know, John McEwen.
Of course.
He's a titan in the Mid-Atlantic on the HVAC, on the hydronic side. Anything that has to do with hydronics, he knows. He also is a shareholder in the company, so he has a vested
Nice.
interest. He's great. You know, we also have a guy like Jeff Hunter, another seasoned veteran, has been around a long time. He's been very invaluable when I purchased their company, and bringing him on board with Roy Hall. That was a big change. Then I got some younger guys that have come on now, been with me 5, 6, 7 years. A guy like Paul Teberger, who's he's in the Virginia market, and he's my team leader in that market, where he's working with some of our people, and he's well talented because he can do multiple things. He can be a trainer, and he's also a good sales guy.
Yeah, nice.
And so that really, really works. And then down in the Carolinas, I brought on Dennis Wilkins, who you've met.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's our trainer in the Carolinas, and he does a bang up job down there. The guys love him, and he's really doing a fantastic job. And then we hired another young kid, Zach Ware, who's got all that sales experience in the HVAC and brings that young energy into the business, which we're excited to have. So we really have a good mix of personnel in the organization. I'm really proud of him, and more to come.
No doubt. And I'm going to give a shout out to Dennis, because he's been so helpful to me as I get up to speed with the Bosch mini split product. Anytime I've had a question, I reach out to Dennis, often out of desperation.
Yeah.
And he's always there to help.
That's
so
awesome.
so really, really
Glad to
cool.
hear that.
Yeah, absolutely.